Get decked.
Thanks for tuning in. This is DBZ Card Strategy. We're going to be opening up a brand new segment today. It's called Decked. And I'm going to be joined by my friend James. We're going to be going over elaborate deck philosophy. What I mean is thinking about your deck as more than, say, a pile of cards. You're thinking about how do these cards relate to each other, about proper ratios, themes, focus of a deck, that sort of thing. That one has to think about before one builds a deck that they expect to win with. So this is actually inspired by the community for Dragon Ball Z Card Strategy. We've received a couple of different emails. Kevin, you know who you are, about what does one do to build a good deck. He had a series of questions that enlightened us, opened our minds, thinking about a Q&A, and that's why we're here. So,
well, some of us, it opened up our minds. Others, it's just like, yeah, what the hell do I think when I make a deck? It just kind of happens on its own.
That is true. It is a very organic process, and explaining is like, I shall explain to you how to spice meat. It might seem strange at first, but you'll get the hang of it. Then you'll get the feeling of it.
And you'll realize that, like every culture, they have a different spice ratio or spices that they use. Same too with every person.
Oh my gosh. So like we said, popular questions coming up. Actually, all these are contributed by Kevin. Kevin asked us the first question here. He was saying that he's been playing the game for a long time, and he's been going through a long losing streak, which he says, of course, he brings in all the necessary cards. In theory, his deck should be winning no problem, but there's, of course, the issue he keeps losing. So we should explain first about that, in case anyone is newer to the game or maybe just doesn't know how to explain that first time around. I'll go first, then James will jump in. When I started playing Panini DBZ, I should explain that I hardcore played Score Z back in the olden days. I mean, to the point where we put hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and far too much money. I lost count into the game. Stacks of books and boxes and tubs full of cards, and it's bad. We love the game so much, and it was so hard when it bit the dust during GT. If anyone who lived through the GT debacle will tell you, the game really got lousy at that point. So, one thing I would share with anybody who is coming, is playing the game now, just starting now, or maybe is going through that big slump at the beginning, you have to pay your dues. I remember playing this game early on because I was trying to play it as if it were the old Score Z game, and I was getting beaten up. I lost in grand style. We're talking enemies who had half their deck left or more at the end of combat or end of the game. I was getting MPP feed out when I was barely trying to get my little combo strung together. Those were bad times.
Also, to put it in perspective too, he was also playing Nail at the time. Nails can kind of work a little bit better now because, Panini's decided to give them more things to kind of level out the weaker personalities, but, back then, there wasn't a lot you could do with him.
It's true. So if I was to say anything, that's the thing. You somewhat have to expect to lose a lot at the beginning. And if I may lay down a really important perspective, and this is true for just about everything, it has little to do with just Dragon Ball. If you don't take your lumps, you'll never have what you call an introspective time. The ability to look into why did you lose, what is the strategy that is not working. If you were to keep winning, your deck would not keep getting refined in the same way.
No.
So the losses are counting. If you feel as though you're getting frustrated, I understand, but remember, you're learning more from your losses than if you are from any victory.
Yes, definitely. And a lot of it, especially when learning to play a new game, is learning the flow of the game. And this game right here is a very interesting one because it's not like a lot of games where you have your turn, then your opponent has your turn, and you interact with that. It's more or less of you have your turn, and then you go into combat, and your opponent gets to right away basically react to anything that you play. And it's very different, and you have to figure out, what can I go in on? What does a good hand look like when going in? And, even that good hand can sometimes turn horrible. So you gotta learn when the risk management is and stuff like that, because that's a very hard thing to learn. And I definitely lost a few games. I didn't lose all of my games. There would be one or two here that I'd win because I made a deck myself to where I could grasp kind of how it worked, and so I had some idea of, cohesion of how it should work. But a lot of my lumps and a lot of me learning how to play this game was literally learning the flow. When do I go in? When do I not go in? I still have problems with that sometimes because it looks like a great hand. I go in and it's horrible. And I've had times where like I played Goku for a little bit and I was going in with 3 cards in my hand and people were looking at me like, why the hell are you doing this? And come out like with a huge lead on my opponent because I knew that it was a good hand.
So what we're saying is time. Time is going to be the thing that develops your instincts, and
just playing to yourself. You know?
Yeah, knowing how you play your own personal play style. I'll give you an example, but don't take it too seriously. Don't take it to heart because it's a bad strategy. It's how I live, but I've been
going in all the time.
Yeah,
going in, no regrets.
Oh
anything.
Yeah.
Yep.
And being extremely much too aggressive. And sometimes forcing combats that I really shouldn't.
Yeah, and sometimes there are times where like you might sit on the fence on whether or not to go in, and sometimes you just have to pull the trigger. And then there are some times that you go in knowing that that's what you needed to do, and then you end up realizing, nope, I needed to wait because I could have won.
I'll give you an example of when your instincts fight your, I guess the word here is common sense. Okay, not too terribly long ago, I was in a regional competition. I went up against an Android 20 deck. For some odd reason, after one long day of fighting and a lot of mental fatigue, I genuinely forgot that Android 20 is not much of a threat in combats you force on him. That generally speaking, his hand will be full of non-combats and other unusable cards, and if you simply keep forcing him into combats, you can pressure him into a bad situation fairly readily, especially early game. But I kept thinking to myself, I need to set up first before I start doing that. That was a big mistake. I should have actually pressured him from the first hand and just kept attacking and attacking and attacking, because he'll crumple under repeated physical attacks.
And also another example of this too, though, is things like new masteries, new personalities come out. You know, I lost 2 matches. Well, 2 weeks ago I lost 2 matches because I went in on combat that I didn't think about. I almost milled out my opponent, and the next turn I could have milled him out, and he needed 3 anger to win. And what I forgot, I'm just like, okay, then I'll just let him throw his 1 attack, and then I'll be able to counter and I'll mill him out. Forget the new red mastery. And the new Trunks, there's 3 anger right there. Yep. You've already lost, whether or not you believe that. So, you know, it's one of those, you can't always predict how it's going to come out sometimes. And even like the things that you think are the best, like I've had combats where I went to go grab a card and I grab a block because my opponent has 3 cards in their hand, and I'm like, okay, I'm getting ready to tap and throw something at me, and he had nothing but blocks, and I could have won a game had I grabbed an attack instead, you know. And it's usually a right call most of the time, and that time it was the wrong call, and you can't beat yourself up about it, but you'll think about it a little harder next time.
Exactly.